there's a lot of news coming out of the January 6th Commission. I'm going to stop talking now and show you some of the video. So, first of all, we have Trump's former campaign manager. What's his name? I think Brad Parscale. He, when he saw what was unfolding on January 6th, his reaction was very similar to the other right-wingers who, now they might pretend like, it was nothing, bro. It was a bunch of tourists walking around. But back in the moment, they were like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. So, with that being said, here we have what went down with Brad Parscale talking to Katrina Parsons.
President Trump's former campaign manager, Brad Parscale, recognized the impact of the speech immediately. And this is what he said on January 6th in excerpts from text messages to Katrina Pearson. Mr. Parscale said, quote, "This is about Trump pushing for uncertainty in our country, a sitting president asking for civil war." And then when he said, "This week I feel guilty for helping him win," Katrina Pearson responded, "You did what you felt right at the time, and therefore it was right." Mr. Parscale added, "Yeah, but a woman is dead."
So he's talking about, I believe he's talking about Ashley Babbitt there, who was somebody who died on January 6th because she was trying to rush in to, I think, the Senate chamber, and the cops opened fire because she was crossing the barricade. And Brad Parscale blaming Trump for that here. Blaming Trump. Like, if he never said go to the Capitol, if he never said we're going to have a wild time on January 6th, this wouldn't have happened. That's very interesting.
And yeah, if I was Trump and I knew my rhetoric killed someone, when Ms. Pearson replied, "It wasn't the rhetoric," Mr. Parscale said, "Katrina, yes, it was."
Whoa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Wow. So this is, again, Trump's closest allies on January 6th looking at what's going down like, oh my God, this is totally his fault. And what have I gotten myself into? I feel terrible for helping to get this guy elected in the first place. Okay, I got more for you, though. So this is an ex-Oath Keeper. That's one of the militia groups that were on the ground on January 6th. He reveals January 6th was, quote, going to be an armed revolution and possible new civil war. So let's see some of his commentary.
Chairman, Mr.
It's not this guy. They're gonna cut to him in a
Van
second.
Tatenhoff, in the run-up to January 6th, Stuart Rhodes publicly implored President Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act, the 1807 law that allows the president to call up militias to put down a rebellion against the United States. And I want to get your thoughts about this in the context of your prior relationship with Stuart Rhodes. I understand that you had conversations with Rhodes about the Insurrection Act. Why was he so fixated on that? And what did he think it would enable the Oath Keepers to do?
Well, I think it gave him a sense of legitimacy, that it was a path forward to move forward with his goals and agendas. I think we need to quit mincing words and just talk about truths. And what it was going to be was an armed revolution. I mean, people died that day. Law enforcement officers died this day. There was a gallows set up in front of the Capitol. This could have been the spark that started a new civil war, and no one would have won there. That would have been good for no one.
So what he's pointing out here, and this is pretty important, is that now in retrospect, all the far right people and groups that were there say, I don't even know what you're talking about. We weren't, this was a protest. We were exercising our First Amendment rights. But what he's saying is no, within the groups that were there, the armed groups, the militias that were there, whether it's the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers, in their minds, their goal was exactly what today the left is accusing them of wanting. They're like, yeah, no, we thought maybe this would be an armed revolution. We thought that we were maybe starting a new civil war. We thought this would be the spark. So they're admitting the thing that previously they have vehemently denied. Because remember, the narrative would keep flipping back and forth. And one of the arguments that they would often make is like, the people who did the violence weren't even us, bro. That was Antifa. Antifa was there making us look bad because Antifa was pretending to be Trump people. And, that's bad. They go back and forth between that and, oh, what happened was a peaceful protest, and, oh, what happened was violent, but it was based. So they can't get their story straight because there's no there is no sound, solid reasoning that would appeal to normie Americans for what they did.
He was always looking for ways to legitimize what he was doing, whether by wrapping it in the trappings of it's not a militia, it's a community preparedness team. We're not a militia, we're an educational outreach group. It's a veteran support group. But again, we've got to stop with this dishonesty and the mincing of words and just call things for what they are. You know, he's a militia leader. He had these grand visions of being a paramilitary leader, and the Insurrection Act would have given him a path forward with that. You know, the fact that the president was communicating, whether directly or indirectly, messaging, you know, kind of that gave him the nod. And all I can do is thank the gods that things did not go any worse that day.
What did the Oath Keepers see in President Trump?
They saw a path forward that would have legitimacy. They saw opportunity, I think, in my opinion, to become a paramilitary force.
Wow. All right. So, but now let's get to the most important part, in my opinion. So, again, Jonathan Swan works for Axios. He had a write-up of this fight that happened in the White House. Well, now we get more specifics from the people that were in the room. Okay? So you can see the headline here. You're a bunch of pussies. January 6 witnesses describe unhinged brawl in Trump Oval Office between Team Rudy and the Sane. All right. This is a little bit long, but it's worth every second.
The startling conclusion is this: even an agreed-upon complete lack of evidence could not stop President Trump, Mark Meadows, and their allies from trying to overturn the results of a free and fair election. So let's return to that meeting at the White House on the evening of December 18. That night, a group showed up at the White House, including Sidney Powell, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, and former Overstock.com CEO Patrick Byrne. After gaining access...
I love how random that is. That's like, you know, how Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, randomly rose to prominence within the ranks of the right-wing election deniers. And that Overstock.com guy? What? I haven't even heard of or thought of Overstock.com in like 5 years. This guy somehow became a prominent right-winger? That's okay, whatever.
Access to the building from a junior White House staffer, the group made their way to the Oval Office. They were able to speak with the president by himself for some time until White House officials learned of the meeting. What ensued was a heated and profane clash between this group and President Trump's White House advisors, who traded personal insults, accusations of disloyalty to the president, and even challenges to physically fight. The meeting would last over 6 hours, beginning here in the Oval Office, moving around the West Wing, and many hours later, ending up in the president's private residence. The Select Committee has spoken with 6 of the participants, as well as staffers who could hear the screaming from outside the Oval Office. What took place next is best told in their own words, as you will see from this video.
Did you believe that it was going to work, that you were going to be able to get to see the president without an appointment?
I had no idea.
In fact, you did get to see the president without an appointment.
So let me set this up for you a little bit. Sidney Powell is one of the most prominent conspiracy theorists on the far right. She's right up there with Mike Lindell. Now, we've covered a bunch of stories of Mike Lindell laying out his insane theories that appear to be totally made up. Sidney Powell is Mike Lindell, basically. And she has all these crackpot theories about the election that have been just proven demonstrably untrue, and yet she still pushes forward. So she's saying she got a meeting with Donald Trump in December. This gets good. Wait for it.
We did.
How much time did you have alone with the president? And I say alone, you had other people with you, but
Right.
from his aides before the crowd came running?
Probably no more than 10 or 15 minutes.
Was in that...
I bet Pat Cipollone set a new land speed record.
I got a call.
So in other words, she was alone with Trump, or her and Michael Flynn were alone with Trump, and Trump's team was like, you left Trump alone with these absolute psychos? And so they rushed to get in there because they wanted to combat whatever, but preposterous misinformation they were feeding him about the election. Because he might listen to them and then do the most drastic of drastic actions, even above and beyond what ended up unfolding. Oh boy. So again, you're going to see Cipollone here and Hirschman in a little bit. But look, these guys, I don't know anything about their politics, and perhaps they're also terrible in their own respect, and I'm sure they are because they're working for the Trump White House. But on this specific issue, they literally became heroes. Because the argument they had may have stopped the country from literally, devolving into a constitutional crisis, because Trump could have called martial law or done something I don't even want to think about. Anyway, let's continue.
Either from Molly or that I need to get to the Oval Office.
So that was the first point that I had recognized. Okay, there was nobody in there from the White House. Mark's gone. What's going on right now?
I opened the door and I walked in. I saw General Flynn. I saw Sidney Powell sitting there. I was not happy to see the people in the Oval Office.
Explain why.
Well, again, I don't think they were providing. Well, first of all, the overstock person, I've never knew who this guy was. Actually, the first thing I did, I walked in, I looked at him, and I said, "Who are you?" And he told me. I don't think any of these people were providing the president with good advice, and so I didn't understand how they had gotten in.
In the short period of time that you had with the president, did he seem receptive to the presentation that you were making?
He was very interested in hearing particularly about the CISA finding and the terms of 13848 that apparently nobody else had bothered to inform him of.
They're going to get to more on that in a second, but Trump was receptive to what Overstock dude, Michael Flynn, and Sidney Powell were telling him when he was alone with them. That is terrifying. That's terrifying. Because you're going to hear the stuff they were telling him in a minute.
I was asking, you claim the Democrats were working with Hugo Chavez.
So this is Hirschman. Him and Cipollone, I guess, are White House counsel. So they're lawyers. I don't know if you heard what he just said. He said they were talking about, Venezuela was controlling the voting machines. Wait for it.
Venezuelans and whomever else. And at one point, General Flynn took out a diagram that supposedly showed IP addresses all over the world, and who was communicating with whom via the machines, and some comment about Nest thermostats being hooked up to the internet.
So it's been reported that during this meeting, Ms. Powell...
God damn it. So it's crackpot stuff. Total crackpot stuff. It's a beautiful mind nonsense. Oh, Venezuela and Iran are controlling the elections and the Dominion voting machines, and look at these IP addresses all over the world. Oh my God, bro.
Talked about Dominion voting machines and made various election fraud claims that involve foreign countries such as Venezuela, Iran, and China. Is that accurate?
Sure.
Was the meeting tense?
So in other words, yeah, he says, I plead the fifth. I'm not answering that. In other words, yeah, that's the information we were giving the President of the United States.
Oh, yeah. It was not a casual meeting.
Explain.
I mean, at times there were people shouting at each other, hurling insults at each other. It wasn't just sort of people sitting around on the couch, chit-chatting.
Do you recall whether he raised to Ms. Powell the fact that she and the campaign had lost all of the 60 cases that they had brought in litigation?
Yes, he raised that.
And what was the response?
I don't remember what she said. I don't think it was a good response.
Cipollone and Hirschman and whoever the other guy was showed nothing but contempt and disdain of the president.
That is bullshit. That's total bullshit. Hirschman and Cipollone are in there trying to combat the total conspiracy theory, garbage, misinformation with zero evidence, and they're getting angry in doing so. So, how the fuck do I have to even respond to this stuff? And look at the way Sidney Powell frames that. oh, they're showing contempt for the president of the United States. No, if anything, they're trying to save his ass from making one of the worst decisions in American history. Calling martial law or seizing voting machines or whatever the fuck. Calling a national emergency. Wow.
Yeah, I remember the three of them were really sort of forcefully attacking me verbally. Derek, and we were pushing back, and we were asking one simple question as a general matter. Where is the evidence? So,
what response did you get when you asked Ms. Powell and her colleagues, where's the evidence?
A variety of responses based on my current recollection, including, can't believe you would say something, things like this. Like, what do you mean, where's the evidence?
Total gaslighting. When he's like, all right, you got all these theories, where's your evidence? The other point which they touched on there was like, he kept saying to them, you lost 60 court cases. You had your day in court.
You should know, things like that, or, a disregard, I would say, a general disregard for the importance of actually backing up what you say with facts.
And, then there was discussion of, well, we don't have it now, but we will have it or whatever.
I mean, if it had been me sitting in his chair, I would have fired all of them that night and had them escorted out of the building.
It's never going to...
Look at how dishonest she is. Oh, they're showing contempt for him. I would have fired them and taken them out of the building. Why? Because they're giving a different viewpoint than you and pressing you to actually show facts and evidence? Oh, she's such a psycho. She's the worst. She's just as bad as Lindell, if not worse than Lindell, because at least Lindell comes across as a total unhinged psycho, whereas Sidney Powell looks like, like a grandmother who's just like, oh, I'm going to be honest with you. But no, she's a total psychopath.
Both challenged what she was saying, and she says, well, the judges are corrupt. And I was like, everyone? Every single case that you've done in the country you guys lost, every one of them is corrupt? Even the ones we appointed? And I'm being nice. I was much more harsh to her.
So one of the other things...
Yeah, nah, low-key, I know I said it already a bunch of times in this clip, but Hirschman and Cipollone deserve some sort of fucking award for what they did here. Because the fact that they argued back against Sidney Powell and Michael Flynn and Overstock dude, and the fact they did it aggressively may be the thing that made Trump say, he was like waffling and more agnostic, and he didn't go as far as declaring martial law or some shit. But that point, you can't refute that point. Where's your evidence? Oh, we don't have it, but maybe we'll get it. You lost 60 court cases. Oh, yeah, but the judges are corrupt. Everyone, the Republican judges, the judges who are Trump-appointed judges, they're all corrupt, every one of them. Like, comical, but also incredibly dangerous.
That's been reported that was said during this meeting was that President Trump told White House lawyers, Mr. Hirschman and Mr. Cipollone, that they weren't offering him any solutions, but Ms. Powell and others were. So why not try what Ms. Powell and others were proposing? Do you remember anything along those lines being said by President Trump?
I do. That sounds right.
I think that it got to the point where the screaming was completely out there. I mean, you get people walk in, it was late at night, it had been a long day, and what they were proposing, I thought was nuts.
I'm gonna categorically describe it as you guys are not tough enough. Or maybe I put it another way, you're a bunch of pussies.
This is incredible to me. It's like high school in there. So because these guys are like, you don't have the evidence, what you're calling for is not legal, what you're calling for makes no sense, your theories are bogus, they say, oh, you're just weak. You're just a pussy. No, even though they're right-wingers, they don't want to totally trash the entire system of governance in the country at the whims of a wannabe dictator based on bogus, nefarious nonsense. No, they're just a bunch of pussies to Rudy Giuliani. Oh, my God, man.
Use the expression, but I'm almost certain the word was used.
Flynn screamed at me that I was a quitter and everything, kept on standing up and turning around and screaming at me.
He's a quitter.
And at a certain point, I had it with him. So I yelled back. Either come over or sit your effing ass back down.
the president and the White House.
That's when it almost became a fistfight. Hirschman was like, either come over here and back up your words or sit your ass down. Jesus Christ. This is in the White House, dog. This is in the White House. This is total madness.
Team went upstairs to the residence, but to the public part of the residence, the big parlor where you can have meetings in the conference room.
Oval. They call that the yellow oval?
Yes, exactly, the yellow Oval Office. I always called it the upper. And I'm not exactly sure where the Sydney group went. I think maybe the Roosevelt room. And I stayed in the cabinet room, which is kind of cool. I really like that. All by myself.
At the end of the day, we landed where we started the meeting, at least from a structural standpoint, which was Sidney Powell was fighting, Mike Flynn was fighting. They were looking for avenues that would result in President Trump remaining President Trump for a second term.
All right. That's what happened there. Look, it really is the case, I can't stress this enough, that Cipollone and Hirschman, the fact that they aggressively, vociferously argued that Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, the Overstock guy, Rudy Giuliani, that these people are insane. And they're not giving you solutions. They have no evidence for any of their conspiracies. The fact that these guys stood up and it came to yelling and they were aggressive and they basically tried to form a cocoon around Trump and escort these guys out and make sure they don't come back in, that literally could have prevented martial law from being declared. Because here's what I know about Trump. He doesn't care about evidence. He doesn't care about data. He doesn't care about facts. He's a vibes guy. And so if he sees the White House lawyers getting angry and loud and aggressive and saying, look, this is fucking absurd, that was probably the thing that led him to be more agnostic at the time. Like, shit, I want to believe Sidney Powell and Michael Flynn, but Hirschman and Cipollone seem pretty angry about it. And I cannot overstate how important that is. Now, again, I'm sure the fact that Cipollone and Hirschman worked for Trump tells you a lot about them, right? I'm sure they're ideologically very right-wing in their own respect. But clearly they're not totally insane where they go down the rabbit hole and believe that fucking Venezuela and Hugo Chavez and Iran are hacking our voting machines to get Biden elected. So, I really think it is the case. Looking at all the evidence that's been presented so far, the fact that so many of the people surrounding Trump, his staffers, his daughter, the attorneys, the fact that they were all pretty strongly like, no, we lost, that prevented an even worse case scenario. And it was already bad. Don't get it twisted. It was already bad. But the memo that they were circulating inside the White House about potential action moving forward, including things like declaring martial law, seizing the voting machines, demanding some sort of a mucked up recount. Obviously, what Trump settled on was like, I'm just going to try to force Mike Pence to reject the results of the election, and sort of passing the buck to Pence. And Pence, thank God, he found the one shred of integrity and dignity he had where he was like, no, I'm not doing that. And Pence was talking to other right-wing legal experts, and there was a right-wing legal expert who was like, Trump doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. You don't have the authority to just overturn the election. And so it was the amalgamation of all these people who pumped the brakes at the last minute who really, really prevented an even worse case scenario. So, but man, what a crazy story this is. This is an insane story. You guys got to share this around because this is, everybody needs to know. I mean, that's how close we were to an even worse scenario. So Hirschman and Cipollone, Jesus, for all their flaws, it's like, whew, you guys really saved the day there at the end by providing a strong counter-argument to the total psychopaths. So, bad ideas have consequences, man. And just the fact that Sidney Powell and Mike Flynn got a meeting with Trump is crazy. Think about this. Trump considered Mike Flynn to be his VP back when he ran in 2016. If he had picked him, we would be in a way worse scenario today because Mike Flynn would have said, I reject the results of this election when he was doing the ceremonial job of certifying the election. And oh, God help us all in a situation like that. So this is terrible. I mean, but at least, look, will there be criminal charges? That's doubtful. It is. It's very doubtful. But this is political theater, but the theater is landing in the sense that now there was a new poll that came out, 50% of Republicans don't even want Trump to run in 2024. 61% of the country says don't run. So it is hurting his general election prospects for 2024. And on that alone, plus the fact-finding mission segment of this, that's important enough.
Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.